This is The Guardian.
Hi there, Guardian Women's Football Weekly fans. It's Faye here. Just to let you know, just over an hour after we finished recording this week's pod, we had the news that Jonas Eidevall has resigned as head coach of Arsenal following their 2-1 defeat to Chelsea at the weekend. Our analysis on the game still stands, but myself, Susie and producer Sophie have just jumped on to react to the breaking news, and that's what you'll hear first in the pod after the intro, before we jump into the pod that we recorded earlier. I hope that makes sense. Hello, I'm Faye Carruthers and welcome to the Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Jonas out were the cries, and now it's been confirmed. The Arsenal boss has left his job after boos rang out around the Emirates after a chastening week in North London. Emma Hayes watches her Chelsea successors Sonia Bonpastor beat the Gunners on home turf. City go top in an ugly turnaround win over Liverpool, while Manchester United thrash Spurs. We'll look back at the week's Champions League action, look ahead to the international break, plus we'll take your questions, and that's today's Guardian Women's Football Weekly. What a panel we have today. Susie, I'm so sorry. I just don't even know where to start, but...
You have to laugh, otherwise you'll cry.
I'm so sorry. That's really harsh. Really harsh. But what a week for you.
Yeah, it's not been great, has it? I mean, sort of to be expected given the circumstances. I went into Saturday not full of confidence, shall we say. So, hey-ho.
Understandable. Tanya Oxtoby, full of confidence. It's been a while. How goes it in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, good, thank you. Landed last night, so busy day ahead. And look, we're excited. We've got a playoff coming up. Can't wait to get back together with the girls. So it's been a very long time. Can't wait to see their smiley faces. We'll see if they're still smiling after 3 days, but yeah.
I was going to say, depends what drills you're going to put them through. Sophie, Downey, busy old week for you, getting busier as well.
It is. It's this time of the year, right? It's non-stop, but very exciting things to come.
The hats are back. We're into the winter. They're back
is.
Again.
It's very chilly, very chilly.
OK, so when we recorded the pod earlier on, we started with all eyes on the Emirates, stakes high ahead of the first London derby of the season following a poor week for Arsenal. And after a draw with Everton and a midweek battering by Bayern Munich, the last thing on earth under pressure head coach Jonas Eidevall needed was to then come up against Chelsea's Sonia Bonpastor for the first time under the watchful eye of former Blues boss Emma Hayes. And at around 10:30 in the morning UK time on Tuesday, Arsenal announced that Jonas Eidevall had resigned from his position as head coach of the Arsenal women's first team, and that he leaves with immediate effect. First team assistant coach Renee Slagers is going to take charge of the team as their interim head coach. This is what sporting director Edu had to say. We thank Jonas for his commitment to the club and achievements here since joining us in 2021. We have great respect for the dedication and commitment he showed to our women's first team and recognise the role he's played in the growth and development of Arsenal women. We all wish him the very best for the future. Our focus will now turn to the process of appointing a new head coach, and in the meantime supporting Renee as she takes interim charge of the team, starting with two important fixtures this week. Director of Women's Football Claire Wheatley said the search for a new head coach is underway and will make a further announcement when that process is complete. Susie, discuss. We were not expecting that.
Not expecting it and expecting it. I don't think we're expecting it now. I think with the international break coming up, I think many thought that might be the opportunity that they would take to move on from Jonas's tenure and, possibly even the January winter break if they were kind of wanting to sort of hold on a little bit longer and, kind of find someone before they got rid. But I don't think anyone thought it would be this immediate. Obviously, we knew this game was make or break against Chelsea at the weekend. But yeah, I mean, it's not nice, is it? I said it in our original recording before we knew it was gone, that it's horrible to see someone lose their job, right? In this fashion is not a pleasant thing to have to witness. But I think, it was quite evident on Saturday that the fans completely lost. The players looked desolate and disconsolate at the end of the match, looked idealist during, And yeah, it was hard to see a way forward based on the way they were performing and playing. I think saw an interview with Beth Mead in the Mix Zone afterwards where she said that they were kind of, not in a good place at the moment and, lacking confidence and things like that. And ultimately the buck stopped as a manager and eventually he's got to go. In a way, it's, probably good that Arsenal have acted so swiftly to sort of address the rot before it sets in too deep and the negativity gets too strong.
Yeah, interesting you say that Arsenal reacted, but actually, the statement says he himself resigned. Was that very much, Sophie, a case of respect for a manager that's won back-to-back trophies for them in the last 2 seasons and, falling on his sword rather than getting the chop, if you like?
I think you would imagine so. That's more likely the way forward. They've probably had a big conversation about it over the last 24 hours, I imagine. And yeah, clubs do this, don't they? It's a kind of seen as a respect when a manager is on his way out. But yeah, I think it is probably a mutual agreement as well. I think it was very, very clear, as we've mentioned, that things weren't going particularly well for them. As Susie said, I'm equally surprised that it's now, but actually I'm quite impressed it's now. Because you can imagine if things, they've got 2 winnable games this week that you would on paper say they would win, Vålerenga and then West Ham at the weekend. And you can imagine the kind of, for the outrage if that does start to go south. So, being quite on the front foot with it maybe in terms of changing things now, it doesn't allow that kind of narrative to take place.
Yeah, let's give him a little bit of love for what he has actually achieved for Arsenal, because I think that is really important. He joined from FC Rosengard in Sweden just over 3 years ago now, won back-to-back trophies in the last 2 seasons. Lots of memorable moments, Susie, as well, from an Arsenal fan's point of view. How do you assess his 3.5 years in charge, even though it's ended in a disappointing way?
It had so much promise, right? Like, he came in and you could immediately see an impact. Things are on the rise, things off the pitch are going really well. They've won 2 Conti Cups in his tenure, but they've really completely turned around as well, actually, the fortunes against the top 3. When Jonas came in, they were really, really struggling in those games. And, last season they had the best points record taken off of each other amongst the top 3 of any of the clubs. So there were clear signs of progress there. But then, the sort of persistent issues, the lack of consistency in performance, the struggling to break down teams that set up in a low block, the just sort of lack of, I was going to say dynamism, that's the wrong word, the lack of unpredictability in the way they play, I think really became a problem that's just got worse and worse. And the issue is that they haven't looked like solving those problems. That's the big issue.
Yeah. Listen, Tanya's busy coaching with Northern Ireland, so she couldn't jump on for her reaction to the news, but she does give plenty of opinion on what we have seen recently. So let's dig into the game from the weekend itself. Here's what we recorded earlier on before we'd heard the bombshell news. It finished Arsenal 1, Chelsea 2. Arsenal's woes continuing. They got off to the worst possible start when Myra Ramirez fired the Blues ahead within 4 minutes. Sandy Baltimore doubled the lead as Chelsea threatened to run away with it. The Gunners did rally. Caitlin Ford pulled a goal back in the first half, but Chelsea held on to continue their 100% start to the campaign. Lots of questions over Jonas Eidevall and his future. Arsenal have already dropped 7 points this season after just 4 games. They sit 6th in the table. Boos rang out around the Emirates at the final whistle. He was questioned on it after the game and said, "I gave absolutely everything today and in preparation for the game." I think you can see that the players gave absolutely everything as well on the pitch. That's the part you control as a coach. That's the part I can ask for from the players as well. Susie, you did, write an article leading into the game in The Guardian, and it was very measured about your thoughts on the manager. And in isolation, the result probably not considered season defining, but it does feel as if the pressure is increasing a little bit, and the fan base have had enough.
Yeah, it's definitely increasing. The fact that does it mean that women's football has made it into the mainstream when there's Jonas out being painted onto the walls outside the Emirates, and fans waving fake P45s in the crowd and stuff. I don't know, it feels like a bit new territory. Well, I don't like it. I mean, I think it's like kind of horrible as well, because this is a person's job, but at the same time, like, the results have been bad, but if anything, it's the sort of persistent problems that have been there sort of throughout Jonas's tenure haven't gone away, and if anything got worse. This issue with breaking down low blocks in particular, it, as we saw last season, it wasn't against the top teams they had the problems, it was against the teams sort of a little bit further down the table that they dropped points to. So, like, the fact that hasn't gone away and seems to be getting worse is a big problem. That teams know what to do, that they're quite predictable in the way they're set up, makes it really, really worrying. And I thought, they really played into that narrative by conceding 2 goals so early on in the game against Chelsea, in what should be a more expansive game that they can get a bit more out of. But you saw in the second half that they just allowed Chelsea to, I say allowed, they dominated possession, but Chelsea were able to just sit back and soak up that pressure, in the knowledge that Arsenal really struggled to break down those types of defensive structures. So, like, I feel like they made a rod for their own back with those 2 really badly conceded goals early on in that game. But it's the pattern of behaviour of creating so many chances but not managing to break down defences, particularly low blocks, that just, I think, makes it a really, really difficult situation moving forward. The players just look completely shot, and there's a disconnect there between them and the manager, and the fans and the manager, and, like, yeah, how long that will last, I don't know.
As a coach, Tanya, how do you view it from the outside?
Yeah, I think I echo it's really difficult to watch, because it's a human being at the end of the day, and you can tell that he's being very, very open, saying, look, I'm trying everything, I'm giving everything. I agree, there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect. I can see the players they seem a little bit lost. That's how it appears in terms of the interviews and some of the body language. But in terms of the issues that you speak about there, Susie, breaking down low blocks, it is one of the hardest things to do in the game. And I remember my time at Chelsea, it was one of the most difficult things that we faced. But you have to find a way, and I'm not sure, maybe over the last, in particular, probably 18 months, 2 seasons, that Arsenal have been able to do that, and they've got very, very talented players, and I think with a club with the stature of Arsenal, you're going to face a lot more low blocks than you are the open games. So it's about trying to find a solution to that, because look, I think it's a really, really difficult situation that they're in now, in particular in terms of the league, because the last thing you want in October is to know you have to win every single game, because the WSL is so competitive, and that is a massive amount of pressure to pile on to an already struggling group of players and coaches.
I actually thought Farrah Williams made a really good point on the BBC's Women's Football Show, because she said that there's been a lot of talk about Jonas, but the players have to take some responsibility here, because it's not like they're not creating chances. They're creating so many chances, and what is it? I think they only had 3 or 4 shots on target to Chelsea's 6 in that game, despite sort of creating around 20. And so she was saying that the onus has to be a little bit on the players as well, that they're not kind of finding that way through. They're top quality players, but if the confidence is gone through the group, then maybe that's the issue. But yeah, I actually thought that was a really, really interesting point she made. And yeah, I think not everything should be directed at Jonas.
Don't put all the onus on Jonas.
Oh God, that was so bad.
I can't help myself, even though it's early. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to lighten the mood. But I tell you what, it's a really interesting point there about, and I've been thinking about it a lot the last few days. We're very, very used to this kind of abuse, knee-jerk kind of shouting, managers out, etc. in the men's game, and we're not so used to it in the women's game. And I hate comparing them a lot of the time, but actually I think it is important to in some ways, because I don't know whether I like the kind of trend towards it, because I don't like it in men's football either, because it is human beings that we're talking about. And I think that this kind of view that it means that women's football has made it, what does that say about us as a society? I just find it really uncomfortable. I don't know whether I'm just riffing and, you know, maybe just having some kind of little moment. But what do you think, Soph?
I think it's really hard. I always hate the manager discourse, like the manager kind of asking, you know, the manager out. But I think with Arsenal, the problem is it's been pretty sustained. You know, the problems aren't going away. And actually, I think the progress, when you're looking at it from a bigger picture, they look this season like they've gone backwards a little bit. And that's, I think, where things get really, really tough because, as Susie was saying, you know, the last season, the breaking down of the low blocks was really hard, but they were winning the games against, you know, the cities of the world. They beat Chelsea once as well. This season, they've dropped points against City and they've dropped points against Chelsea. They've lost against Chelsea. So, and then they're dropping points to Everton. So when you're looking at it, I guess, from a fan perspective and you're supporting your team week in and week out, and you're not even picking up the points that you were last season. And I know that's really harsh because you're playing Chelsea and, you know, historically the best team in the league, as are City. They're playing really well at the moment. But I just think that's just going to be the measure, the barometer along what people are measuring them on. And I know we'll get to it later about the Champions League, but the manner of that defeat, I think, as well, the capitulation in it, really just added to this narrative this whole week of making it really, really tough and adding to the noise of the manager. So I do agree. I don't like the reactive, but I do think there's a bigger story to it as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's been building up for a little while, hasn't it? But yeah, and we will talk about the Champions League results a little bit later on, but that was an embarrassing one for sure, 5-2 defeat to Bayern Munich. Just a quick one, staying on Arsenal a little bit. He decided to make quite a few changes again to his starting lineup, which I'm not sure is always helpful. What did you make of those decisions and the kind of overall performance, Tanya? And within that question, sorry, 3 questions in one, that's terrible journalism, I'm very sorry. When you're in the middle of a bad run, how do you even go about trying to turn it around?
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of points there, you know, in terms of the changes that were made. I think, in fairness to Jonas, he had to do something, you know, and, you know, you can't go away and I suppose lose in the manner they did and not have a reaction. So I can understand, you know, the rotation. I can understand why he's trying to find a little bit of a spark or a way out. And look, they've got a really talented squad. So realistically, you know, if you're coming in, then you should be able to execute the role that's being asked of you, etc. And I think the issue I see with that is I'm not really sure that Arsenal have the depth in the defensive areas, and that is the issue that they're finding, as well as obviously breaking down low blocks. They're conceding goals that are really uncharacteristic for a top team to concede, and so therefore, you know, making changes in terms of, I suppose, attacking impetus is not necessarily, you know, solving some of the other issues. So there's that. I think, you know, from like a team point of view, I just think it's difficult when you're trying to get the balance right of freshness. You've had a midweek game, you've had a tough away game, you're trying to keep players fresh, you're trying to make sure that everybody in the squad feels like they've got value, but you don't want to disrupt too much. And it's a really, really fine line with that balance, because like I said, you want to inject some energy, you want to, you know, give people opportunity, but you also don't want to disrupt the rhythm and the connections that form. So yeah, coaching's a tough gig. It's, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, I think sometimes.
Who'd want to do that job, eh?
I don't know.
You're braver than me, that's for sure. Let's talk about Chelsea. I mean, it's kind of complete contrast, isn't it, in terms of their brilliance in front of goal, particularly the brilliance of Myra Ramirez, player of the match again, another standout performance, and she just, her very presence, Susie, just seems to strike fear in her opponents.
She's such an intelligent player. Her technical quality is outstanding, and then she's got this physicality as well. She's just able to sort of brush past players with such ease, and manipulates the ball so well. Her positioning is just superb. She's so, like, she looks so difficult to defend against. I mean, there were, you know, Leah Williamson is if one of England's best defenders, if not the best defender. You know, obviously hugely talented defender, reads the game so well, and Myra Ramirez made her look average over and over again. There was a moment where Ramirez breaks down the wing and Leah's chasing her and just has to sort of fall away, puts her hand in the air, appeals for the ball having gone out of play, which it hadn't. And there was nothing else she could do. She couldn't keep up with her. She didn't look like she was going to be able to get a tackle in because she's just so quick and technically resilient. She's just such an incredible addition to the league. Frustratingly so for an Arsenal fan, but from a journalism point of view and a neutral's perspective, she's just unbelievable to watch. I think she's going to be right up there for top goal scorer awards at the end of the season and things like that. I just think she could be hugely influential and be the difference between them winning a Champions League or not, personally.
I think the difference between them winning the Champions League or not could potentially be their defence, actually, Sophie, because they were massively under pressure, weren't they, in the second half? And Bonpastor did admit that there was room for improvement. Is that a big worry?
So I think that's where the frailties might be. If you're looking for frailties at this stage of the season, and it's probably understandable, it's kind of a new coach and everything, but those wide areas defensively are a bit of a red flag at the moment, I think. Lucy Bronze has maybe struggled at times. She brings so much to the game in terms of her experience and kind of the impetus that she can bring in attack as well and supporting the attacking play. But I do think she has looked, fallible at times. Defensively, you look at the Caitlin Ford goal at the weekend, and she was beaten by Caitlin Ford down that left side quite comprehensively. And I think the same happened against Real Madrid at times. And then on the other side, you've got Sandy Baltimore, who I don't think is naturally at all a left back. I think that might change when Niamh Charles comes back from injury. She's obviously dislocated her shoulder or whatever and had an operation, so she's out for a bit, Niamh Charles. And I think that's kind of forced Sonia Bonpastor to put her in defence when probably we'll see her move forward when Charles does come back. But she performed pretty well, I think, Sandy Baltimore, but I do think it just means that Chelsea are a little bit unbalanced. I also think the fact that they had to change up they changed up their centre defensive partnership as well. Kadisha Buchanan wasn't available for Champions League in midweek, which meant Natalie Bjorn came in, and then they switched it back out. And I thought Buchanan had a really good game, but it just, I guess, adds a bit of disconnect in that defensive area when you're wanting to try and get stability, especially under a new coach.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been the perfect start result-wise, Tanya, hasn't it? But just as they did against Real Madrid in midweek, they did allow their opponent back into the game. Difficult for you to comment on this, but I'm fascinated to know your opinion, bearing in mind you were on Emma Hayes' coaching staff. But do you feel that they've lost a little bit of the ruthlessness that maybe she brought, or is it just a question of settling in under the new boss?
I think we won't know till at least the midway point of the season. I think the positive for Chelsea is they've got players to come back in. You look at the players that are currently not available. It's frightening, to be honest. And they're still winning and they're still getting results. And they're conceding goals, but actually I would be really surprised if that doesn't start to kind of improve over the coming kind of games and weeks, because you look at the mentality of that group, the players that have been there a long time, that doesn't change, and they will not be happy with conceding, the goals in the manner they have, and they'll be wanting to make sure that they're getting back to keeping clean sheets, etc. I know Sonia's mentioned that's an area that they want to continue to improve on. So I think we can judge maybe halfway through the season. I think there's been a lot of change, a lot of movement, a little bit of rotation back there too, maybe players not necessarily playing in their preferred position. But I think once they've got a settled, defensive line, once they've got players back, once they've maybe had sort of 10, 12 games together, then we might be able to sort of judge, where that sits. But I'd be really, really surprised if there is a mentality shift, because I think you heard Millie Bright talk after the game that at the end of the day, this is what it is to be Chelsea. If you want to play for this club, this is what it entails in terms of that real ability to grind out results, make sure you get the win, do whatever it takes. And I don't see that changing. It's part of the club's DNA, and it's why they've been so successful for such a long period of time.
Yep, absolutely. And they've thrown the gauntlet down, haven't they, to Manchester City. They faced a challenging visit to Anfield to face Matt Beard's Liverpool. It finished Liverpool 1, Manchester City 2. Olivia Smith continuing to make a name for herself at her new club. She fired Liverpool ahead, but Bunny Shaw, surprise, surprise, out to spoil the Reds' party. She scored 2 goals, levelling the score before firing home a 92nd minute winner to send her team home with a valuable victory. As with Alex Greenwood a couple of weeks ago, Susie, Shaw called it an ugly win. But I mean, having that ability to grind out a victory is the hallmark of a champion, isn't it?
Oh yeah, 100%. I thought they weren't going to take 3 points from that game for a huge portion of it. I thought Liverpool would get a draw at least, despite their sort of dominance. Olivia Smith having to go off injured and things like that. I really, really thought they were just going to be a little bit stumped, but they dug it out. But I think the real test of City this season will be when they come up against, the Arsenals and Chelseas and Man Uniteds and have to do the same. Because I think that's where they've sort of struggled to grind out results. Doing it against teams a little bit further down the table is the sort of something they have been able to do, I'd say, season on season. But it's against those top teams when they've gone ahead and things, or they've come back into games, they've not been able to put them to bed or have given away 3 points quite late on, and that kind of stuff. So I think that will be the real test. But they just look absolutely formidable at the moment, and like really exciting to watch. Obviously Miedema was rested, or had picked up a knock in the Barcelona game, so kind of given a bit of time out. So, but to still look that fluid, the combinations between her and Bunny Shaw and Lauren Hemp, I just thought were like electric. Their intuitive reading of each other's movements is just sublime and like lovely to watch. And yeah, they look really, really good.
And obviously they're in the group stage of the Champions League for the first time in a while, so it's a bit new for them, juggling multiple competitions this early in the season. Tanya, obviously that brilliant win over Barcelona midweek, but I feel almost a little bit as if backing it up in the league was even more impressive, because this is exactly where you could slip up against a Liverpool side that are pretty decent.
Yeah, it's all the things we've just been talking about, right, with Arsenal. So it's about making sure that you give yourself the opportunity by winning when you're not necessarily performing at your best. And look, Liverpool do this to teams over and over and over again. Credit to them. They are so difficult to get a result against. They've proven that, time and time again, especially last season, causing upsets all over the place. So I think to go to Anfield, to grind out a result, get the points on the board, that is now what the WSL is about. It's not about going and necessarily always dominating games for long periods and, it being cricket scores. Like, those days are gone. And, to be able to play midweek, massive game that would have taken a huge toll physically, and, the emotional energy that goes with that, being back in the Champions League for the first time, to then go away to Anfield again, big occasion, and grind out a result. It's credit to City. I think that those are the moments there where, as a team, you as you mentioned, you see the fluidity and the connectivity and that's what gets you through. I know where you're going to be. I know the movement you're going to make. I know the pass. I know the delivery. Those instinctual things are the things when you're tired and you need to get a result. Are the difference, I think, between great teams and average teams. And you look, credit, as I said, credit to City. I thought they were sensational midweek. What a game to watch! And then to be able to back it up with maybe a bit of energy depletion on all levels, but to still grind out the result, get the points, keep themselves well in the title race. That's all you can do.
Yeah, and when you've got Bunny Shaw in your team, it kind of helps a little bit, doesn't it? Susie sprinkled the love on Myra Ramirez earlier, Sophie. Sprinkle some love on Bunny Shaw. Some people have labelled her the best forward in the world right now. Do you agree?
I think it's hard to disagree. I'm very willing to spread some love on Bunny Shaw because I just think she's absolutely phenomenal. What she brings to a game. I think everyone will look to her goals, obviously, and those are incredible. But I think it's everything else as well. It's a whole package that you get with her as a centre forward. And I thought she really epitomised City's energy on Sunday against Liverpool. The way that she was coming back deep to influence play and try and transition into attack and get everything started, being on the end of the things in the box. And I think that goal at the end where she just like goes toe to toe with Niamh Fahey and just shrugs her off in the end and gets that shot away is incredible. But there was a moment, I think, in the latter stages that really stuck out for me. The ball was on the touchline and there was like a gaggle of players around it, and she was just shouting at the ref, shouting at her players to get involved and get in the energy. And you could tell that that's where the source of enthusiasm and fire comes from, right from the front to the back. But she is epitomizing that completely, and it's just a whole package with her. But yes, I would say that at the moment she is probably the best forward in the world.
Yeah, she's got leadership qualities as well, which is really important. Quick word on Liverpool. Well, not a quick word, a good word actually, Susie, because they started off well, but they sat off more and more as the game kind of drew on. How do you analyse Liverpool's performance?
I mean, that's inevitable, right? When you're playing City, that that you're going to end up sort of backs against the wall a little bit. They had some decent spells and decent chances. I think it's unfair to lay too much on a performance against a team like City for a team like Liverpool. I don't think they've necessarily kind of looked the team that they were last season, which is disappointing, but then I'm not sure they've kind of had the budget to manoeuvre in the transfer window in the way perhaps they would have wanted. Obviously we're seeing the fruits of Olivia Smith's entry into the team, but the fact that she had to go off injured and then they're struggling to sort of make things happen, or have anyone with that kind of electric drive that she does and sort of slightly fearlessness, it speaks to the depth of teams outside the top three, which is where the trouble is. I think they did really, really well to cling on the way they did, defended brilliantly. Just when you're playing someone like Bunny Shaw, sometimes you're not going to find an answer to that. She's just too good. So yeah, I don't think this is a game that will be season defining for them, but I think they could be in a little bit of trouble further down the line, because of the way everyone else has elevated this season, as opposed to necessarily them sort of going backwards but just standing still a little bit.
I think to that point you only had to look at the goalkeeper situation. Rachel Laws got injured or got hurt during that game, but because Tegan Micah is injured as well and their third goalkeeper is now at the Under-17s World Cup, got called up for England, she had to stay in the game when she probably should have come off. And you could see that with some of her movement and the saves that she made, or the lack of at times, I think, because she was hurt. So that just shows, I guess it's an example. Matt Beard was saying before the game that they tried to get an emergency goalkeeper, but at this time of the year, the teams with deep goalkeeping pools are in the Champions League, so they're not going to give them up at this point. And so it makes it super hard, I think, for them when you do have to. I think they were preparing Jana Daniels as the backup goalkeeper in case Rachel Laws had to come off. So that just, I guess, shows the problem in depth at times with them.
And they were out without Matt Beard as well, weren't they? Obviously, he was ill. So, they didn't even have their manager on the sidelines. Obviously, capable assistants, particularly in Scott Rogers, who has been there in the WSL. But, still, that's a big blow to not have your manager on the sidelines for a big game like that too.
Yeah. Quick word on Olivia Smith, though, Tanya, from a coach's perspective. She's really making a name for herself on Merseyside.
Yeah, look, she's a sensational talent. There's no doubt about it. And I thought she caused all sorts of problems in the first half. She was brilliant to watch. I wouldn't want to have to try and get my team to defend against a talent like that. But she's electric. Every time she picks the ball up, something happens, and you can see you've got experienced defenders in Man City, and they're backing away. You go press, no, I'll balance off, and I think the confusion she causes is great. What I'd like to see is probably a little bit more support around her to bring the best out of her, and maybe not be as isolated as she is. And I understand, obviously, against a team like City, you're probably going to see that, but I'd like to see maybe in a few of the different games in the WSL this year, players players get in and around her and see what she can really do in terms of her creativity, because she's such an exciting talent. And I agree with you, Susie. I think when she came off, it changed the game, a bit like, I suppose, Ramirez coming off for Chelsea changed the game as well. So those types of players have a massive impact when they're on the pitch. They also have a massive impact when they have to come off, and that's a shame for a fan, because obviously it was great to watch.
Absolutely. This is just to finish off this little section. We've had a message in from Laurie's Fair Pensioners. City and Chelsea are clearly the best two teams in Europe this season, but why are Arsenal still clearly better than United and Brighton despite their slow start?
Are they? Like, we haven't seen them play either of those sides. I think it's a bold claim to say that Arsenal are better than them. Like, we've not seen that matchup happen. I think Arsenal are going to be, like, in their current form, are going to really struggle against Man United in particular, but also probably against Brighton. Like, when your confidence is low and when other teams can smell blood in the way that they can for any team playing Arsenal at the moment, then there's no reason why they can't show that they're better than them this season. And also, I think we need to be careful to not be a little bit too WSL centric there. Chelsea and City are doing brilliantly and obviously had great results in the Champions League, but are they the best in Europe? I think that remains to be seen.
Excellent response. That's it for part one. In part two, we'll round up the rest of the weekend's action and we'll look at a thrilling start to the Women's Champions League. Welcome back to part two of the Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Let's continue with the rest of the weekend's WSL action. Mark Skinner's Manchester United continued their unbeaten run at Leigh Sports Village on Sunday. It finished Manchester United 3, Tottenham Hotspur 0, thanks to a brace from Elizabeth Turland and second half penalty from captain Maya Letitia. By the way, did you see Mark Skinner say Elizabeth Turland's got a little bit of Haaland in her? I mean, there's rhyming again. Here we go, Jonas Onus. But also more comparisons, like Jordan Nobbs the other week. What do we make of that, Sophie? And what do we make of another victory for Manchester United, third in the table this season?
It was a perfect start, I think, for Manchester United. I think there's still issues that they need to iron out, that maybe a 3-0 scoreline kind of masks a bit. And it sounds really harsh to be criticising that, but I do think that first half in particular, until Elizabeth Turland's goals just before half-time, Tottenham were actually the better team, and they did create more throughout the game than United. But I think what they did is they reacted pretty well, and when you have a Elizabeth Turland on the pitch, you can change games in an instant. I thought their press was pretty lax in the first half, especially when they kind of sat off Tottenham a bit, allowed them to get space, allowed them to get chances, but they worked out that, down the flanks, that's where Tottenham can kind of falter at times, and they utilised the width of having Celine Bizet at right back rather than in the forward areas to be able to isolate that, and that's where the goals came from in that first half. So I think it's a work in progress. I think they're winning. That's the main thing at this stage in the season, right? You want to just try and build that momentum, and then all of the pieces can hopefully fall into place over the next few months. There's still relationships being built on that pitch. I thought it was interesting that we've seen Grace Clinton play more centrally in recent games, in the first two games, but she was out on the right this time as well, a bit more. So he's obviously trying to figure out the best way to utilise the players in his squad, and the question of using, I guess, Ella Toone and Grace Clinton in the same team as well, that's still out there. He's trying to find the right answers to those problems. So, but winning is everything. So that's the most important thing.
And I did slightly misquote Mark Skinner there, because she could have had a hat-trick, Elizabeth Turland, by the way, just denied by the woodwork early in the second half. This is what he actually had to say on her. She's intense in a good way. She's a person that's always focused. She doesn't dip off her focus, whether it's pressing or whatever the task is. She's all in. I think she knows Haaland personally. I don't want to compare the two, but the immense and intense action of both of them, that's how she performs. And they do know each other. Turland's brother is Haaland's sister's partner, if you can work that out. But they both played for, is it Brine, where he's from, in Norway? But yeah, anyway, she's been brilliant. But how important can she be for Manchester United, Susie? We're heaping love on the forwards today.
Their siblings are in a relationship. I think that's the easier way of saying it.
That's why you write stuff and I just try and speak gobbledygook.
She can be hugely influential this season for Man United. I mean, we saw like the kind of presence that she offers last season when she was at Brighton against a team like in a team that wasn't necessarily going to be able to get the best out of her. Although obviously we've seen huge improvements in Brighton this season, but at Man United, like they've been sort of crying out for an out-and-out number 9. I mean, I'd say even since before Alessia Russo left to a certain extent. I mean, we're sort of seeing some of the issues that kind of plague her at Arsenal. They were there when she was at Man United to a certain extent. Her and Sina Blackstenius have both struggled to sort of take on that role of, being able to grab something with one chance kind of thing. The kind of like Sam Kerrs, the Myra Ramirez's, the Bunny Shaws of the world. Turlan's that kind of player. She's a player that will pull something out the bag and, do something quite special when needed most. Both of her goals were really, really nicely done. The first one obviously was that superb volley, and just like the positioning, the way she shapes her body, holds off the defender, like it's just so skillful. I thought the link up as well between her and Celine Bizet and Grace Clinton for the second was really nice too, and a sign that, kind of they made some really, really smart acquisitions in the summer that have really contributed to the side. But she could be hugely significant this season.
Yeah, frustrating afternoon for Spurs again though, Tanya. They had opportunities, couldn't make them count. What is Robert Villaham's side missing? Is there one thing?
I don't think it's one thing. I didn't watch all of the game, but the bits that I watched, I felt, he's spoken a lot, hasn't he, about wanting to be a side that, play his way, possess the ball. But I felt it was a little bit laboured, if I'm honest. I felt like they had possession, but they didn't move it quickly enough, and they didn't, I suppose, disrupt Man United's structure in the second half in particular enough. And so for me, I think it's just about, and I don't know whether that's maybe a bit of confidence. Again, it's early in the season, trying to get some connectivity between players. But I think for me, it just feels a little bit laboured. So I just think that intensity and that ball speed, something we saw a lot from them last season, just seems to be missing a little bit. So that for me is like one of the most glaring things. I think sometimes because of that ball speed, they create their own problems and allow teams to sort of get the press on and, win the ball back in areas that maybe they don't want to be giving the ball away in. Structurally, they don't look terrible. There's not like a massive big issue there. I just feel like if they're going to play that particular style, they've got to move the ball a little bit quicker with a little bit more purpose and try and disrupt teams, because the beauty of having a particular style of play is that the players understand and know what it is you're going after. But the downfall of that is that opposition know what you're doing and what you're going after, and therefore you got to try and get that balance right. Because if you're predictable, which is not necessarily a bad thing, I'm not saying it is, then you need to make sure that you're doing it and you're doing it really, really well. So a little bit more ball speed for me in terms of what they're trying to do would probably alleviate some of the issues.
Yeah. Back-to-back wins for Brighton. Hard-fought win away to Crystal Palace. It finished Palace 0, Brighton 1, thanks to Bruno Villamala's first half goal. We've been full of praise, haven't we, Sophie, for Brighton so far this season? But they did struggle a few times in this match. But maybe they needed it because they showed a grittier side to their game.
Yeah, I mean, they came up against it, I think, in Palace, who we spoke about last week when they got they were coming into this one on the back of their first win of the season, a really big win for them against Leicester. So I think they knew it was going to be a tough afternoon. But I think that's really important. It's like what I said with Manchester United, right? It's finding the way to win games. And when you show that, it's all very well hitting 4 goals here and there and beating people quite significantly. But it's those tough moments that really develop the kind of grit and resilience. And when you're holding down under pressure, and I think, when you have a keeper like Sophie Bagley as well to pull off a save like she did in the final moments to deny Annabelle Blanchard, I mean, that was an absolutely stunning save. And that just shows that they're willing to work hard for each other, I think, willing to work defensively. We talk a lot about their attacking play and their attacking players, when you have Kiko Seke, Fran Kirby, Nikita Paris on the pitch. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of focus on those players. But actually, when you can dig in and produce a defensive performance like they did, that's a really good marker of what's to come over the next few months.
Yeah, Sophie Bagley raised a smile from Tanya there, player she knows well from Bristol City. Laura Kaminsky disappointed with the result, but said that her Crystal Palace side looked like they belonged in the WSL. Do you agree, Susie?
Oh yeah, completely. I've been really impressed with them, as we've said on previous podcasts, so far this season. Even with the, sort of first 3 defeats, they've just looked well coached. I think they always look very, very good in the first half. I think they're sort of catching up with the physicality gap between the Championship and the WSL, and that's why they're struggling in the second half of matches. I think it's also why another reason why they're struggling is the lack of depth between them and other WSL sides. Obviously, they've brought in some experienced players and some really, really good young talent that we mentioned previously in some of their loan signings from some of the big clubs. But at the same time, they've not got that depth through the squad there to kind of give them a really, really strong bench. And they could have had a point easily against Brighton, which I think is a testament to the work they've been doing. I think they learned a lot from their first couple of games. Obviously coming off the back of the win against Leicester, their confidence was high, and had Sophie Bagley not pulled off that absolutely sublime save to stop Annabelle Blanchard, then would be talking about another point. But the fact that they are, I know we're only 4 games in the season, but they're 8th, right? And they have a first win off the mark, and none of Villa, Leicester, West Ham or Everton have a win yet this season, shows that there is real quality there, and that they're not just going to plummet necessarily back down again that easily. It's going to cause some problems for the teams around the bottom of the table at the moment, who maybe hoped that they would kind of be their safety net.
Yeah, well, let's talk about some of those teams around the bottom of the table. Finished Everton 1, West Ham 1, both sides looking to get their first wins of the season. Anouk Denton put the visitors into the lead, but an own goal from Camilla Saez saw Everton share the points. Bit of a missed opportunity, Tanya, really, wasn't it, for both sides to move off the bottom of the table?
Yeah, I think both teams would have been looking to get the 3 points out of that game. So yeah, I think they'd both be disappointed, not to take maximum points. And I think, when just touching a little bit there on the point around Crystal Palace, these 2 teams, West Ham and Everton, are probably looking around at the bottom of the table, thinking we're in a little bit of trouble here. And look, I know Everton obviously had a decent result against Arsenal in terms of, the point that they got, but there was the first game of the season when I watched them play Brighton, I just felt like they really lacked any attacking impetus, and I think I'm watching going, where are you going to get your goals from? And I think that's probably going to be their biggest issue. Everton and West Ham tend to give away goals, way too easily. So look, there's work to do in and around the bottom of the table there for both of those teams, but I think they'll both be very, very disappointed that they didn't take maximum points. When you're looking at the fixture schedule, that's one game where you're thinking, for both teams, we really need to make sure we get something out of that.
Yeah, Everton's that own goal remains Everton's only goal of the season, Susie, which is pretty damning.
Yeah, I mean, hugely damning. I'm very, very worried for them, and I take responsibility for having jinxed them so significantly by saying surely they couldn't have an injury crisis like last season in our preview pod to sort of kickstart things. But I think we should get Marva back on the pod to talk in full detail about just how bad things are going.
She's in hiding.
Yeah, she's gone AWOL, into a pit of despair probably. I just really struggle to see things looking up, and I'm really, really worried about them across the course of the season. Given the number of injuries they have, they're unlikely to have significant funds in January to be able to do anything particularly special there. And yeah, if I'm Palace and West Ham in particular, then I'm quite enjoying their slide.
Yeah, wow. So mean.
I'm not if I'm them.
I'm not. Oh, I see. Sorry. I see what you mean. Not quite so mean in that case. Soph, I am being mean by giving you the last game of the weekend to analyse, because it was not particularly eventful. Aston Villa 0, Leicester City 0, both Robert DePau and Omandine Mikel. Fair to say, having teething problems at the start of their WSL careers. They haven't kick-started it, have they, at all? Anything to worry about particularly, or they just need a little bit of confidence and momentum?
No, I just think it's more about timing and needing a bit more time to settle into their squad and get the things running that they need to get running. I think it's with all of the case with these new managers at this stage of the season is, they're trying to implement things very, very quickly, and I don't think we'll really see the true picture, as we've said before, until probably Christmas about where things are going to sit. It wasn't the best game. I will have to say that. I do think it's quite something, though, when the best players are the two probably central defenders for Aston Villa. I think it was the first time in a game for Aston Villa that players made over 100 passes, and both of them made over 100 passes. So that probably shows where something from that. But it's a work in progress for both of them. They're both showing good signs, good bits and pieces here and there. It's just about piecing it all together.
Yeah, let's head to the Championship, shall we? A change at the top of the league this weekend. Charlton's unbeaten run came to an end. London City leapfrogged them into second with a 2-0 win over their London rivals. Birmingham City, meanwhile, jumped to the top of the table with a 2-1 victory over Sheffield United on Friday night. History was made, record attendance, 15,387 in the league's first ever time-weird derby. Newcastle United came out on top of it, beating Sunderland by 2-1. And in another first for the Championship, Portsmouth welcomed Southampton to Fratton Park, another derby. Pompey's struggles continued, though, as they suffered a 5-0 defeat. Finally, Bristol City made it back-to-back wins. They beat Blackburn Rovers by 2-1 at Ashton Gate. Listen, let's talk about the UEFA Women's Champions League. We touched on the English team's results briefly in the first half, but let's take a proper look at what happened. It was a really eventful opening, I thought, but no one, and in fact we didn't, but that's not a surprise because our predictions are terrible, as you know. No one predicted Manchester City beating Barcelona, but they stunned the European champions, a 2-0 victory. How did they go about it, Susie?
Just incredibly well organised. I thought Viviana Miedema ran the show, was sublime. They were defensively really well organised. Just an incredible performance. It's hard to describe the game because it was just... I was going to say surprising, but I think that's unfair because I also wasn't surprised. I mean, I know we ribbed Tom mercilessly for predicting that City could win it, but, Barcelona are a fantastic team, but they're not infallible. They've got a new manager in too. They have, kind of always had some level of defensive fragility. City have an incredibly well organised defence. Obviously, Alex Greenwood has been playing out of her skin as one of the best centre-backs in the league for a long time. So in that sense, whilst it's a surprise, it's also not a surprise. But yeah, for me, I thought Viviana Miedema was the difference. I thought she was just really, really difficult to play against and for them to handle. And yeah, a phenomenally stunning performance.
Yeah, we should really give all the accolades to Tom Garry. We'll hear from him later in the pod, actually. But he did say it and we all laughed at him, which is ridiculous. Chelsea got off to a winning start, 3-2 win over Real Madrid. They were still asked some questions, though, Soph, weren't they?
They were. I think particularly in that second half, it got a bit nervy in the final stages as well when they, Linda Caicedo scored pretty late on and made a nervy last 10 minutes. So it was a really weird game, I think, that one. It didn't really feel like a 5-goal thriller, which is what the scoreline kind of suggests. It was actually quite dull, which pretty much all Chelsea-Real Madrid games are, to be honest. In the past few seasons that they've met, it's never been particularly fascinating. It's always a bit of a slog, I think, for Chelsea to get there in the end, but they generally tend to manage it. I do think Real Madrid now with Caroline Weir back, they could be a different prospect this season, but that's going to take time. She's had a long time out, so they're still finding their feet as well. But for Chelsea, it's about getting off to that winning start, starting right, getting those 3 points on the board is a just really good launch pad, I guess, to look towards getting out of the group. And that's the ultimate main thing at this point in time. And the performances will come as long as they get through. That's the main thing.
I know we've touched on Arsenal already, Tanya, but, we need to go through their torrid night in Germany, a 5-2 defeat to Bayern Munich. What happened? And I mean, it kind of makes the next match against Vålerenga a must win, really, for lots of different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we knew what happened, then the solution would be Jonas would have grabbed that with two hands. But I think Pernille Harder happened, really. At the end of the day, super Champions League experience, an absolute winner. She's the type of player, like, when you want something to happen, she's the one that's quite happy to step up and take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and just go for it. And I just felt like Arsenal didn't really have an answer. Like, as soon as that momentum shifted, it was like it snowballed, and there was no ability to stop that momentum. And look, I think to go away from home in the Champions League is, we always used to say, make sure you win your home games, give yourself the opportunity, so that's the important part. When you go away from home, be hard to beat, make sure that you've got a game plan that allows you to stay in the game. And I didn't feel like Arsenal really did that, if I'm honest. So they'll hopefully learn a lot from that in terms of, they're still sort of finding their feet in the Champions League. It's a really steep learning curve. But yeah, I just think, when you've got quality players like Harder on the pitch, you can't afford them, the momentum and the time to influence the game. And I thought Arsenal allowed that to happen way too easily.
Yeah, they've got a home game next against Vålerenga, haven't they? By the way, Celtic were beaten 2-0 by FC Twente in their first ever Champions League match. But the rest of the action continues. Arsenal at home. Man City travel to Vienna to play St Pölten, while Chelsea head to Enschede to face Twente. Listen, while we have you with us, Tanya, there's an important few weeks ahead for you and for Northern Ireland. You've alluded to it already. How are you feeling ahead of that Euro 2025 playoff with Croatia?
Yeah, excited. It's been a while since we've been together, and we had such a positive last window, obviously the 2 wins. So really looking forward to getting the group back together. We've had a playoff already once, this group, and we were successful in that. So we'll take some real confidence from that. But yeah, look, I think the hardest thing to do is when you're a team in transition, which we are, we're looking to sort of, I suppose, bring some of the younger players through. It's to continue to win and have positive performances. We've spoken about it pretty much all show. So it's going to be a great challenge for us, but really, really looking forward to getting the group back together and the challenge of Croatia.
Yeah, very much so. Wish you the best of luck with that. England have a couple of games as well. They face Germany on Friday, the 25th of October, and then South Africa on the Tuesday following at the Ricoh Arena in Coventry. Let's head to St George's Park, because we would be completely out of date as a pod if we didn't tell you what the squad announcement was. But Tom Garry's up there for us to tell us who's in and who's out.
Well, yeah, there are no huge surprises in this England squad from Sarina Wiegman, announced here ahead of the friendlies against Germany and South Africa. I suppose the biggest news in terms of recalls is the return of Lucy Parker, the Aston Villa defender, who Sarina Wiegman praised in how she's played this season, back to fitness after injury last term. And we've also seen call-ups again for Frank Kirby playing well at Brighton. No huge surprise there, and all the big names, although Niamh Charles is out with injury as expected. The players that aren't in, interestingly, no Katie Zellum, despite her move to Angel City. And Sarina Wiegman said today that she's not really in their plans at the moment, although they didn't rule that out from changing. And also there's no Chiara Keating amongst the goalkeepers, since she dropped back to perhaps being the number 2 goalkeeper at Manchester City behind Yamashita in the last few weeks. So, and no Ellie Roebuck either amongst the goalkeepers since her move to Barcelona. So the goalkeepers is Mary Earps, Hannah Hampton and Anna Morehouse. And Sarina Wiegman admitted there is a very strong competition for that number 1 jersey in goal for England. There was also a bit of chat today about Chloe Kelly, the Man City winger, who hasn't really been playing very much for Man City this season. She's played fewer than 90 minutes of WSL football so far this season. But Sarina Wiegman said there was never any doubt in her mind that Chloe would be in her squad. She said she's built up credit with them, and despite not playing for City, then Kelly is part of this Lionesses squad and will continue to be so. So, yeah, Germany coming up at Wembley in just over a week's time, and I think you've got a squad full of depth, a lot of competition for places, and Sarina Wiegman seems quite happy at the moment with their preparations ahead of the European Championships next summer.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thank you for not gloating about Manchester City's prediction as well. So the international farewells continue. We feel like there's been a lot of retirements, hasn't there, at the back end of the year. French midfielder Amandine Henry announced her immediate retirement from international football. She's 35 years old, won 109 caps, scored 14 goals, and was last seen at the Olympics this summer. This is what she posted on X. After many years of passion, challenges, and unforgettable memories, it's time for me to turn the page. Time for us to turn the page as well. Been a brilliant pod as always. Tanya, best of luck.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Oh, we'll see you again soon, no doubt. So, safe journey to the Dominican Republic.
Thank you. Bit of an adventure awaits.
Yeah. Susie, see you later. I hope it's a better week.
It's going to be an interesting week, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Right, we'll round up all of the international fixtures next week. Keep having your say. Send in your questions to us via X or emailing us, don't forget, at womensfootballweekly@theguardian.com. And as ever, a reminder for you to sign up to our bi-weekly women's football newsletter. All you need to do is search Moving the Goalposts. Sign up. The Guardian Women's Football Weekly is produced by Sophie, Downey and Silas Gray. Music composition was by Laura Iredale. Our executive producer is Sal Ahmed.
This is The Guardian.